Good afternoon, New York, and the rest of our listeners around the globe. My name is June Stoyer, and I'm the host of the Organic View Radio Show. Our podcast is available on iTunes, Zune, and you can also visit our website, which is www.theorganicview.com. If you have any questions or would like to connect with us, you can simply post a question on our wall on Facebook, send us a tweet to @TheOrganicView, or contact me directly at June Stoyer on Twitter. If you'd like to be on the show or would like to find out about sponsorship opportunities, please contact us at questions@theorganicview.com. Today's show is sponsored by Eden Foods, one of the most trusted names in certified organic clean foods. Listeners of the Organic View Radio Show can receive 20% off any regularly priced items, excluding cases. Simply enter the coupon code ORGVIEW when prompted during checkout. That's ORGVIEW. For more special offers, please visit our website at www.theorganicview.com.
The sale of ivory is a global problem, not just here in the States, but around the globe. As the elephant population dwindles down to the point of extinction, people are joining together to push for bans on the sale of ivory. On today's show, elephant advocates Virginia Woolf and Fiona Gordon from New Zealanders For Endangered Wildlife are going to talk about their amazing efforts to push through a full ban on the sale of ivory in New Zealand. So I'd like to welcome to the show Mrs. Virginia Woolf and Mrs. Fiona Gordon. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Kia ora, June. Kia ora, greetings from New Zealand.
Hello, June. Thank you.
It's so great to connect with both of you, and it's amazing that through technology, so many people can come together to work for such an amazing cause and not only raise awareness, but actually make a difference in this world. I'd like to begin with Fiona. Fiona, can you tell me why you got involved with this campaign to ban the sale of ivory in New Zealand?
Sure, thanks, June. I'm a reader of National Geographic, have been for a long time, and perhaps 2 years ago I read an article about the David Sheldrick Wildlife Trust and was intrigued that elephant poaching was still occurring and that these baby elephants were being left behind and thankfully being cared for at the trust. And I thought at the time I should really sponsor an elephant. I didn't actually at that moment, but when the Brian Christie article came out on blood ivory, I was quite stunned and taken back, and our family decided to sponsor an elephant at that point, and I felt like we were doing our bit. But the turning point for me was with the news of the death of Kwamkwat and her family, and I felt there had to be something more that I could do to ensure my children's children would grow up in a world where elephants roam in the wild. And so I started delving into the New Zealand ivory trade and seeking information from the government here about what New Zealand's stance was on the ivory trade issue itself.
Thank you. And Virginia, can you share with our listeners why you got involved?
Well, some of the reasons perhaps a little similar to Fiona in that I too became aware as a result of the Blood Ivory article in the National Geographic. But I think even before that, I had a former university friend who now teaches and is an actor in London, and he put me in his elephant room on Facebook because there have been a number of articles right throughout the British press, we're talking about 2 years ago now, about the crisis facing the elephants and the poaching and the number of elephants that are being killed. And of course, like many people, I hadn't realised. I'd always known there'd been a bit of an issue with poaching down through the ages, particularly with books like Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, but I'd not really given it a lot of thought. And when I suddenly started to investigate what was happening, I became absolutely shocked. I think some of my first images were of Stephanie Vergniaud of SOS Elephants of Chad, and the images of the 600 elephants that were killed in Cameroon and the carcasses lying in the ground. And I was stunned, and she had a petition up at that point, which I signed, and I would say that she was the first group, hers was the first group I joined, and then I joined Wildlife Guardians, and then I got involved with a number of other groups on Facebook, and I became exposed then to more stories and more images, and then of course the Brian Christie article in National Geographic, and I was traumatized. I was really traumatized. It actually made me ill. And I thought, this is very negative. This is just dreadful. And I thought, well, what can I do down here in the South Pacific to try and make a difference? And it was just then that I got involved with the people in the United States with setting up the first March for Elephants, the first March for an Endangered Species in the history of the world. And I said to the organisers in the United States who were contacting me, I said, well, look, I think I'll have a petition. So the birth of the petition for a New Zealand context arose out of my concern that I had to do something, that I couldn't cope with what was happening, and I felt that it was a way for me to do something positive, something proactive that would make a difference. So that was a really big motivating force for me. And of course I had known for some time about Dame Daphne Sheldrick and the work she was doing with the baby elephants, and like Fiona, I also decided to do something positive to help the species by sponsoring them, and I actually sponsor 3 baby elephants, because I felt that was something really positive to do, as well as running the petition. So that's really the background to my involvement.
Just out of curiosity, how does one go about sponsoring a baby elephant?
Well, you can go on to the David Sheldrick Wildlife Trust site, and they have the profiles of a number of the baby elephants, and you read about their histories, and you see the footage of them going out in the plains and rescuing them. So, on the basis of the profiles, you can make a choice of the ones that you would like to sponsor. The whole process is very professional, and so you can it's a minimum of, say, something like $70 New Zealand, which would probably be about $50 US a year per annum, to sponsor a baby elephant. That's the minimum. You can, of course, pay more, but I think it's a very good thing for children in particular to get involved with, because, they're iconic and children love elephants, and it's something really positive in amongst all this gloom and doom about what's happening. It's something very positive to do. So it's quite a straightforward thing to go on the David Sheldrick Wildlife Trust website, see what they're doing, and how you can do something positive. Would you agree with that, Fiona?
Oh, absolutely. My 2 children revel in the monthly updates that I give them about the elephant that we sponsor. It's quite a nice thing that the family is doing. And again, echoing what Virginia said, it's a very positive thing that you can do to feel that you are directly contributing to assisting those elephants at the David Sheldrick Wildlife Trust.
Fiona, can you explain to our listeners how large is the ivory trade in New Zealand?
The report that I've written is based on official government data for imports and re-exports of ivory to and from New Zealand. I did do a small amount of research, preliminary research if you like, on the domestic trade. New Zealand has a legal domestic ivory trade. I can't tell you exact figures. What I did find was that Webb's Auction House, which is one of the premier auction houses in New Zealand, had reported in 2012 that the market for ivory was very high. I think they used the word booming, and that prices were exceeding well in excess of estimates. So I can't tell you specific numbers, but certainly in terms of the demand for ivory, it appears to be quite high in New Zealand, and that the value of that ivory is also quite high at the moment.
Do you have any idea what the cost is currently?
What I can tell you is that the pieces I've viewed online for trade can be, for a pair of earrings that might be 20 New Zealand dollars, but you could be looking at, tens of thousands of dollars for some particular ivory carvings.
Now, what's interesting, folks, is that elephants can only get pregnant once every 5 years. So the number of elephants that are being slaughtered is dramatically on the rise, whereas the population is not being replenished in nature. And we're actually at a point where there are less than 100,000 elephants in the wild. So for a $20 pair of earrings, is it really worth the cost? This demand is forcing an iconic species to the brink of extinction. Virginia, you referred to the campaign earlier in the interview. Could you talk a little bit more about the campaign and where you're at with your efforts?
As I said earlier, that the petition was initiated at the time of last October's March for Elephants. So when I was one of two organisers for the Auckland March, Fiona was the organiser for Wellington. So the petition was up and running for that march, and I was able to get signatures at the march. And then since then I've collected signatures over sort of a 3-month period. So it's over a 3-month period, and then my Member of Parliament, John Banks, at the time, he is an animal advocate, and he was more than happy to present the petition to Parliament. So on the 16th of April this year, the petition was taken. I took the petition down to Parliament, where I met Fiona, and we officially presented it on the steps of Parliament, and that began the sort of parliamentary side of the process.
Can you please explain to our listeners who are not familiar with your governmental process what is needed in order to impose a full ban in New Zealand?
Well, in actual fact, it's quite a long process, and I think the issue of presenting petitions when you're dealing with a government is quite an involved process. It's been a lot more work than I probably initially realised. You know, once you start this petition process, you do have to see it through, particularly when people step out in good faith and they're signing something of such a magnitude. So basically what happens is that the petition is the process by which, you bring something up to Parliament, and it goes into what we call a select committee process. And where Fiona fits into this is that her report became a necessary part of that petition process. So I was asked to write a submission that basically gave the background to the basic wording of the petition. So in other words, I added in some more detail, which of course included all the statistical findings and data and material that Fiona had. So what it means in terms of the New Zealand context is that the petition goes into a select committee, which is a people from a number of the different political parties, who then discuss they discuss the whole thing, and they will then determine whether or not there is any merit in the petition and the supporting documentation to report back to Parliament to decide whether or not they are going to proceed with the recommendations, or perhaps ask for other submissions or other material to add some more information regarding the petition. The downside could be that the select committee could decide that the New Zealand government is doing more than enough to deal with the trade in ivory here. They could say that the CITES regulations are more than enough to cover it, and that there's no necessity for a full ban. And they could then decide to just note the petition and say, well done, good effort, but we're doing a fine job, and then they would just note the petition and it would go into the archives. So that's why what is going to happen on Thursday, the 24th of July, is so very, very important, because neither Fiona and I, after all the work we've put in, particularly want to see the petition just noted and then just shelved.
Is there anything that fellow New Zealanders can do to support your efforts at this point to see this through?
Well, that's one of the main reasons why I decided to set up the Facebook events page, the Urgent Action page, because I wanted to use social media in a very quick and instant way to get people not only in New Zealand that have come on board in the past few months, but also the international community. I will say that the petition not only has signatures from here in New Zealand, but also from the international community, and that is quite an acceptable process within New Zealand to accept petitions that have got international signatures. So the Facebook page is an urgent action page. It's Urgent Action New Zealand Say No to All Ivory Trade Now. And the purpose of that was really to get people engaged very quickly, given that we were working with a very tight time frame, to work very quickly to send out an automated letter and tweets. And I'm very, very grateful for Occupy for Elephants and the Global March for Elephants team in the United States, people in San Francisco, for helping me along this path. And I had somebody supporting me in Hawaii who put together the automated letter and the tweets so that people very simply and very quickly could get that away to Parliament, so that they all felt engaged and were doing something to support me on what people now are viewing as a very important issue.
Thank you. And lastly, could you share with our listeners the information, the contact information for New Zealanders for Endangered Wildlife?
Well, if people go to the Facebook page for our group, New Zealanders for Endangered Wildlife, then they will be able to get further information from that site.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Fiona, also for participating in today's show. Ladies, it has been great learning about all of your hard work and efforts in helping to save not only the elephants, but the rhinos. And I wish you all the best, and it's good to know that you're doing all the things that you're doing.
Oh, thank you very much, June. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. And yes, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much, June.
Fiona, it's been a pleasure. And folks, thank you for tuning in. For further information, there will be a post-show article on theorganicview.com, which will contain the links to both the action page as well as to the Facebook page, so that whether you're located in New Zealand or if you wish to get involved from other parts of the world, you can join their efforts. Have a great afternoon, everyone.